time to come here tonight for this town hall here in East Las Vegas. We've done a series of town halls all around the valley, making our way. CD3 is a pretty big area. Everybody here get out there? No. CD3 is a pretty big area, stretching from Indian Springs down to Laughlin, up to Mesquite, all the way through the Napa Valley, over to Summers. So we've been working our way around, and finally got an opportunity to come here to East Las Vegas. So look forward to hearing your questions, talking about the issues important to you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about what's going on. I'd rather just hear your questions and concentrate on your issues. Ask that, I know there's folks that are always getting charged up at these kind of events on the issues that are important to them. So hope that we can have a respectful dialogue about the issues that are important to you. I think Keith already talked about our system. You should have, if you wanted to ask a question, you should have got a red ticket. We just randomly pull out the tickets, call out the number, and that's your chance to ask your question. We do that to keep it well organized, doesn't make it look like we're trying to cherry pick anybody or avoid anybody. Everybody who's got a ticket gets a chance to ask a question. So again, I appreciate you taking the time to be here, and with that, we'll pull the first ticket and see who gets the first question for the evening.
925. 925, the last three numbers. That's me.
Okay.
I'd like to have my question later.
Okay. All right, we'll throw that back in and we'll pull it up again later.
934. 934.
Oh, that's me. Hi. Sorry.
That's okay.
We had our tickets mixed up. From what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, the administrative costs for Medicare is about 3%. And from what I've heard of private companies, it's about 15 to 20%. Sorry. That being the case, I guess I want to know why, if so, you would privatize, or why you feel should be turned over to them if their admin costs can be kind of overwhelming compared to what Medicare is.
Great question. The question was, the number that you put out is that Medicare administrative costs is about 3%, where private insurers are somewhere between 10 to 15%. If that's the case, why try to privatize Medicare? Great question first. That 3% number is a false number for Medicare. It's because it doesn't take into account all the existing federal government bureaucracy that's already paid for, that's pre-existing, that doesn't get charged back to Medicare. So the billers, the coders, the processing, all that's already part of the government, it's already paid for, so it doesn't get added into their percentage. On the private side, those administrative costs are added into their percentage. So that's why there's a discrepancy. True cost of Medicare is higher. It's not straight 3%. But the question about privatizing Medicare is still an important question. And that was something that was brought up as a possible alternative. The fact is, Medicare is going broke. There's no two ways about it. In fact, the CMS, the Centers for Medicare Studies, those trustees have said that at the current rate in 2024, Medicare will be bankrupt. It's just 12 short years away. So the question is not whether we privatize it, not whether we keep it a 100% government program, but how do we protect and preserve it for current retirees, for those that are soon to be retired, and for those of us that are still years away from having to rely on Medicare. And that's the discussion that we're trying to have. One option that was put forward was the option of trying to privatize some of it. Didn't work, nobody liked it, so now we're talking about other options. But the important thing is to talk about the options and seeing how we're going to make sure that folks who are 65 or older that are counting on Medicare don't see any change in their benefits. How folks that are 50 to 55 or older, but not yet on Medicare, but have planned their life to have Medicare, don't see a change in that program. Too late for them to make changes in how they prepare for retirement. And how those that are 20, 21, 22, just entering the workforce, might have a different type of Medicare, but they're still 60 years away. And so that's the adult discussion we have to have. Otherwise, there will be no Medicare in 12 years. And everybody suffers from that. And that's what we're trying to tackle now. So thank you for the question.
Next question, 916. 916.
Don't be bashful.
Going. 915.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
What was your opinion on things like the American Jobs Act or the payroll tax cut that they've been debating on politically?
Sure. Two questions, the President's American Jobs Act and the payroll tax holiday. Take the second one first, if you don't mind? Okay. So the payroll tax holiday, as you may know, about a year ago, there was a cut to the Social Security payroll tax, a tax holiday, meaning it was meant to be temporary. That was for all of last year. It was to expire at the end of December 2011. Well, the economy really hadn't changed much, and so there was a discussion of extending that holiday for another year. The House passed a plan that would extend it for a year. The Senate passed a plan that would extend it for 2 months. We couldn't get the House plan through the Senate, so we passed the Senate plan, which kept it going to the end of this month. However, just last week, we passed the bill that will extend it all the way through the end of this year, so it'll go through December 2012. So everybody will continue to see that 2% reduction in their Social Security taxes taken out of their paycheck. So that's taken care of. The American Jobs Act that the President introduced, when looking at it, there are things in there that actually that the House has already passed. There are things that the House already has bills that they're trying to work on. And quite honestly, as with any bill, there are certain things in there that don't make sense and probably won't have a chance of passing. So instead of trying to go through this huge bill and trying to pass it in mass, we've gone through it and said, look, these are the things we agree on, let's pass them. Let's get them out there so we can start putting people back to work. The things that we don't agree on, we're going to have to talk about it and see if we can come to some agreement to get those things out. So there were things in there. Some of those things are things that also passed in the payroll tax holiday bill, having to do with some unemployment reform, about work credit, getting people back to work, being able to go back to work to get trained in a new job, but continue to get your unemployment. Going back, instead of your employer having to lay people off and have nobody get a check, have you cut your hours, continue to work, and unemployment makes up the difference. So innovative ways to keep people in the workforce. So there are things in there that are worthwhile that we've passed, we'll continue to work on, and things in there that we need to continue to try to fix to make it a little bit better.
If you wouldn't mind, when you ask your question, you could stand up. It's hard to hear up here as well. The next one is 928. 928. Anyone? 937. Number 937.
Yes. As you can tell, I'm on Social Security. And it's a major portion of my income. I need it to live on, along with many, many other veterans that I know Social Security is important to us. I'm insulted by the words coming out of Washington that says Social Security is an entitlement. It's not an entitlement. It's a self-funded, not costing the government anything, period. Why is everybody lying in Washington calling it an entitlement and that it's adding to the national debt when it's not? Thank you.
Great question. And I'll tell you that the idea that being called an entitlement is because it's a title of law. That's where the phrase entitlement comes from. Not that it's an entitlement, something that you're entitled to. It's really a benefit. It's not an entitlement, it's a benefit, something you pay into. Just like a benefit plan you have at work. And so you paid into it for however many years you worked. And I probably more than you care to have worked. And I believe and I agree that you're entitled to every last penny that entitled. And you should get every last penny that you should get under the Social Security program. So what are the problems? Again, we go back to the Social Security trustees. They have said that Social Security will become insolvent by 2036. By 2036. And why is that? Well, it's because we've got more people that are collecting now than are paying in. We've got a problem where prior Congresses have raided the Social Security Trust Fund as their piggy bank. That's why I'm a co-sponsor of a piece of legislation that would say contributions to Social Security and Medicare go to Social Security and Medicare and can't be used for anything else, like funding other programs. We have to preserve it and protect it, and we can't do that if Congress is going to continue to raid it. So it comes down to the same issue that we had a little bit earlier about Medicare. You have to have the discussion about how we're going to make sure Social Security is here past 2036, which is the most current projection of when it's going to be out of money.
But no, it's not going to be out of money in 2036. It will not be fully funded after 2036. The worst that can happen is it'll be slowly reduced, the benefits will be slowly reduced year after year after year beyond that, if nothing is done by Congress and the Senate. In order to solve this problem, it's a minute problem. And if people pay their fair share, the people in your category of income versus the people in my category of income pay proportionally the same amount of money, which means the ceiling right now is at $110,000. People over $110,000 income are paying disproportionately into the system and receiving the same benefits. All you have to do is raise the ceiling from $110,000 to $200,000, and it'll be solvent until the year 2100. If you completely remove the ceiling, you'll be looking for people to give the money to. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is one of the things that's under discussion about how do we maintain the solvency of Social Security, and whether or not removing the ceiling is one of those options. And those are, again, we have to have the discussion. We can't wait until 2034 or 2035 to have the discussion of how to keep Social Security solvent.
So what's your recommendations?
I'm sorry?
What are your recommendations?
Well, there were several commissions that have looked at this, and whether or not it's raising the cap. But remember that what you get back as a benefit is proportionate to what you. Not everybody gets the same Social Security benefit. It goes to what you've paid in. And so the question then becomes: if you raise the cap or do away with the cap, is that person going to get a larger benefit because they paid in more? And if that's the case,
employers will pay in more.
Exactly, but that also goes to their benefit. So again, the actuarial analysis has to be carried out to find out whether or not that will truly make Social Security as solvent as some think it will. There's also talk about indexing in the retirement age, increasing the amount of tax that's withheld by percentage. But all these have to be looked at actuarially, and we need to make it. We've got to have the discussion and come up with a solution
Well, I don't
much
want
earlier than 2035.
old fireman climbing up the ladder to bail me out. I don't want a 67-year-old police officer running down the street trying to catch a rapist.
Well, and the good thing about that is that they don't participate in Social Security during state burns.
The guy is one of the few idiots states that don't participate in.
918. 918. Nine 940. You good? Yes.
940. I just have a question about the Keystone Pipeline. Any comments on that?
The question is on the Keystone Pipeline. That's an issue that we've been debating since I arrived in Congress last January. So the Keystone Pipeline is proposed to bring a pipeline from the tar sands in Alberta, Calgary, Canada, all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. It's called the Keystone XL pipeline because there already is a Keystone pipeline that runs from the same area down into the Midwest and Oklahoma. Here's a pipeline to carry tar sands down to the Gulf for refining. There's a big group of us that believe that this is a job creator. And these aren't, my numbers, this is the Department of Commerce's numbers. 10,000 direct jobs. Now some will say, well, they're temporary jobs. Maybe, but right now a job's a job. There's almost twice to 3 times that in indirect jobs, as well as about $3 billion put into the economy. There was a standalone bill on the Keystone Pipeline that passed last July, and it passed with bipartisan support. Bipartisan, about 40 Democrats, as well as the House Republicans voted to move that bill, because we believe it's a job creator at a time when we definitely need jobs. And I've talked to a lot of the trades folks here in the Valley. And although it may not be a direct job here in the Valley, it's a job that some of their members may be willing to travel to the Midwest to take. And we've already got folks in the trades from here going up to North Dakota, going to Wyoming, going to other states that have lower unemployment rates. So for us, it's a critical issue of job creation. I think it's economic security. It's also national security. It brings more resources that are within our own hemisphere to make them available for use, as opposed to relying on countries that aren't necessarily our friends. And so I think it's a no-brainer to House thought it was a no-brainer in passing it with a bipartisan vote. The president said he wants to delay making a decision until after the election. I hope that there are still folks hanging around waiting for jobs when the final permit is issued.
Thank you.
Did he say that?
He did. He said he was going to delay the decision. He's going to delay it until January of next year.
Number 941. 941.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, well, on the Keystone thing, I just wondered where you're getting the facts from. That's not my question, but,
The facts come from the Department of Commerce.
well, whatever that is, independent, bureau or whatever it is, says do 600 jobs. And basically, I've heard that whatever's produced from that, part of the fact is the fact that that is not even for the United States use.
Well, the numbers come from this administration's own Department of Commerce. So it's the administration. I mean, they're in charge of the executive branch. The Department of Commerce is their branch of government.
I would like to know why you support tax subsidies and tax breaks for large oil companies that are making record profits in consecutive quarters, and why this money can't be used for a myriad of other issues.
I agree that they can be used for a myriad of other issues, and I don't support them. In fact, the budget that the House voted on last year did away with those subsidies, deductions, and loopholes. And that was the budget that the Senate refused to take up. I believe that everyone needs to pay their fair share. I don't believe that a company like GE should get away with paying no income tax. So what we need to do is to fix our tax structure so that we lower taxes, broaden the base, get rid of those loopholes, subsidies, and deductions, and make sure that everybody's paying their fair share. And that was in the budget that the House passed out last year. That was the Ryan plan. And so that was part of the tax deduction, tax program within the Ryan budget. And we continue to hope for that. We put those ideas forward, and hopefully someday they'll gain some traction, and we'll get a place people like GE paying their fair share of taxes.
Number 919.
Let go.
My question is relative to your plans. Are you planning or can you state that you are running for re-election?
In this seat, the question is, am I running for re-election? CD3? Yes, I'm running for re-election in CD3.
Good. How many people do you need to go walk with?
Oh, here's your name and phone number out at the desk, and we'll call you.
Number 924.
Yes, sir.
I recently came from the doctors, and I have a question for you. Which agency of the government supervises the claim for Medicare and Medicaid?
A very incompetent part of the government, I'm afraid to say. It's the Center for
The SEC?
No, it's the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Studies. The Center for Medicare and Medicaid Studies. And it is a huge bureaucracy. I can tell you that after housing and immigration issues, probably the third highest issue that we deal with as a caseworker in our office are issues with Medicare payment and Medicaid payment and CMS. Because they contract with local entities. And there's a separate company here that's responsible for doing all those claims, and they're not very effective.
What about just outbound fraud?
Well, we've had cases of potential fraud reported to us, which we handed off to the Inspector General's office within CMS to do an
The
investigation.
Inspector General of who?
Well, there's an Inspector General in each federal agency, so this one goes to the IG at CMS. We also turn it over to the Attorney General's office here in the state, and we also send them up to the Office of Consumer Health Assistance in the governor's office.
Number 938.
Hi, no, I'll be fine. So my question to you is, Mitt Romney, in his comments about letting the market bottom out and stopping the foreclosure process, as co-chair of his campaign, do you support Mitt Romney in allowing and stopping the foreclosure process of the market to bottom out?
Mitt Romney and I don't agree on every issue, and certainly housing is one of them. When you look at what's going on here in Southern Nevada, You can't say you gotta let the housing market hit bottom. We've been bouncing along the bottom for years. And the fact is, we've got to do everything possible to, one, keep people in their homes, and two, get people who are out of their homes back into their homes. And that's why, you know, I continue to support some of the housing programs that were already in place before I was elected. We need to have every tool in the toolbox to make sure that we can help homeowners stay in their homes. In fact, we're working on legislation right now out of my office, which hopefully we'll introduce within the next couple of weeks, getting the final touches on it. That will be kind of a second chance loan program. For people that have had a foreclosure or short sale and lost their home, now renting, or can probably, you know, if they're back to work and afford a home, but they can't get a mortgage because of the foreclosure or short sale, we want to give them a second chance. Because we know that if people get back into their homes and you increase home ownership, people take more pride in that home. There's the multiplier effect. Now they're going to maybe get a contractor to do some renovations. They're going to go to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy some stuff to try to fix up their home, as opposed to if it's just a rental property and they have to maintain it. So, you know, yes, I don't agree on every issue with Mitt Romney, and housing is probably one of the issues where we disagree the most.
Number 920.
I was fortunate with this because that was my question. We're underwater. Our house a couple years ago was valued at $660,000. Today it's worth about $160,000, according to number nuts. What are you doing? What are you doing that will help us refinance our homes? We're not asking for the principal to be reduced. Just allow us to take advantage of the lower interest rates. What are you doing? This is ground zero.
Right.
What are you doing to help us?
Well, what we have been doing within our office is, my office, just here, the local office right here in the district, help folks who contact us and say, look, we need help trying to get our house refinanced. I know, we've heard the stories. You put in the packet, 2 months go by and they call you and they say, you're missing this page. You submit that page, 1 month later they're calling and saying, oh, you're missing this page. You finally get the whole packet together and I say, oh, it's been 6 months since you started, the packet's out of date, you gotta start over. That's unacceptable. We have so many housing cases in our office that I actually hire a realtor to head up our housing casework. Somebody who knows the lingo and can deal with the banks. And we've had fairly good success with helping people. The first thing is you've got to figure out who's actually holding your note. That's one of the hardest pieces, to figure out who actually holds your loan. Once we figure that out, then we can start intervening on your behalf with your lender, try to get them to do a refinance. So if you haven't contacted our office directly to help ask for assistance, please make sure we get your name and phone number out here. Do we have release forms with us tonight?
I believe so.
Okay. I've been working with your office for quite some time. Okay. And I've dealt with that person.
Okay.
And I've told her as the legislation was coming down, we just saw where the people now are going to be entitled to between $1,500 and $2,000 per home. That's 1/10 of the money that popped out.
That's not going to help you refinance.
Here's what I told the young lady that I was dealing with. Be proactive, move in with the president, send some people in there, and just make this as simple as possible. If you're underwater, you should be allowed to refinance your home at the current rate. We don't want the principal reduced. Just give us the opportunity to refinance our home. I said, be proactive. No, I said, let's just wait.
Well, that settlement is not going to help people refinance. The settlement is going to give $2 fine. So, and we continue to work on different pieces of legislation that will try to move that process forward. As you can see in Washington right now, nothing is moving with any great speed. And as hard as we try to push legislation through to help folks in various difficult circumstances, whether it's home ownership, healthcare, or whatever, we have that process that we've got to get the bill from the House, the Senate, signed by the President.
Keep it simple.
Well, that's what we're trying, sir. That's what we're trying.
Thank you.
927.
Dr. Heck, my original question was about that Keystone Pipeline. I'm really upset about it because, if you look at it, it's a lot more than 600 jobs. If you look, they're going to build that pipeline the entire length of the country. It's 20,000 good-paying union jobs. These are the kind of jobs this country needs. We're creating something. And then in addition, once that pipeline's done, all that oil would go down to the south, 100,000 jobs. These are good jobs, and now, so what's Canada doing now? They're talking about building a pipeline to give it to the Chinese. I mean, this is a disastrous decision. So anyway, that was.
Thank you. The confusion on the job numbers might be coming from is that it's roughly 600 jobs per segment of the pipeline.
No.
And I think that's
jobs after the pipeline is built.
But afterwards, but not during the construction, but during the construction phase.
Active construction is 600 permanent jobs.
Well, I don't know how they can predict a permanent job on the pipeline, because all the jobs are also going to be done at the refineries.
Well, that's trying to repair the aquifer in Nebraska. Well, the Republic and government don't want it.
Yeah, 10,000, 20,000 direct jobs to build that pipeline over the course of a couple of years, and I think there's, I mean, you look at who's supporting it, the operating engineers, plumbers and pipe fitters, all the trades unions are backing the building of the Keystone Pipeline.
Number 929.
First off, Congressman, thank you very much, because I don't know what this gentleman's frustration is, but I contacted your office, thank you very much, and I was frustrated. My wife and I were very frustrated trying to refinance a mortgage because we had an interest-only mortgage. And after getting totally frustrated and pulling out whatever hair I had left, I finally got some solution. And when I called your office, contacted your office, they took care of me, and the bank listened, and we were able to refinance at a great rate. Now, my question though is this. I am really upset about what's happened with the Attorney General not doing anything about this Fast and Furious. One of my brother agents was killed. They had this bogus thing where they went in unarmed, and it's just, in this day and age, I can't believe it. And if he didn't know, he should be fired for incompetence.
The House Committee on Government Oversight and Reform has had multiple hearings on Fast and Furious, and it finally got the Attorney General to come in and provide testimony. And his testimony, he claims that he didn't know about it. There have been letters by Congress that have been letters of lack of confidence in the Attorney General's ability to function as Attorney General. But as an executive branch appointee, it's up to the President to determine when and if Eric Holder is no longer the Attorney General. But we continue to hold the hearings. We certainly want to get to the bottom of it. It's unbelievable that a law enforcement officer lost his life with a gun that we lost track of. And we continue to hold those hearings, and hopefully we'll find some resolution. If not to Fast and Furious, but at least resolution for that family.
914.
I understand that we're paying free cell phone service for over 1 million people. And now I understand that the next step is supposed to be subsidies for their car insurance and something else, and I can't remember what it was. And I thought that must be a stupid idea. However, in Nevada last year, we fought for a bill for exactly that. So my question is that true? And why are we paying for free cell phones? Is there a bill out there to stop that?
Well, it's called the Lifeline program, and it was actually started under Ronald Reagan. It was a program to provide low-income individuals with phone service, and it started off as landlines. And when you see your universal access charge on your phone bill, that's what funds the Lifeline program. So we all pay that universal access charge so that folks can have a lifeline, a phone line in their home for emergencies. With the explosion of technology and cheap cell phones, they also now permit a cell phone. But you can't, under the rules, you can't have both. You either have a hard line or you have the cell phone. If you have the cell phone, it's a certain number of minutes per month. And that's based on the universal access charge and the Lifeline program. As far as I know, there's currently no bill out there to stop that program. I've also not heard anything about expanding that program or any other program to include subsidizing things like car insurance. But that's the history behind the Lifeline program, was so that everybody would have at least a phone line so that in an emergency they could call for help. It was started back in the 80s.
932.
I was up in Colorado this last week, and Michelle Obama flew in. I was up in Colorado this last weekend, and Michelle Obama flew in to Aspen or Sean, whatever. She comes in with one plane. There's another plane that comes in and brings her limousine and other stuff. In the meantime, there's a third plane with the president going somewhere else. So what is all of this costing us? What does her trip say to Spain where she rents an entire hotel costing us?
I don't know what the exact price tag is. I don't know what the exact price tag is. I think there's somebody else in the room who maybe or have a better idea. But certainly, I mean, look, when I was in Washington previously, worked with the Department of Defense, I made a lot of those trips in the job that I had. There is a big tail that travels with the president and with the first lady, and it's all based on security. And I don't think, while it may be expensive, I don't think that when the president travels or the first lady travels, we want to put them at risk. And let's face it, there are a lot of people out there, regardless, that like to take a pot shot at the leader of the free world, whoever that person may be. It's the office of the president that we're protecting, and it's costly. And I wish we better staged or figured out their trips, but it's part of the cost that's borne out of the executive branch, the executive level protection.
Number 912. 912. 931.
I'm not ready to get off the housing issue. One of the issues that's really affected Nevada in particular is the lack of capital. We have in Clark County over 50% of the sales go for cash. And that's to investors out of Florida, Canada, China, Europe, New York, a lot of other places. Texas is very fond of Nevada too. But we don't have a lot of people locally who are able to borrow money because the big banks are not actually lending here on a regular basis. The Fed Reserve issued a white paper that stated that it's important for a less restrictive lending paradigm to take the place of what's happening now. It appears as though went from this wildly easy money scenario to now under the FDIC, the review process has become so restricted that home loans are viewed as derogatory on a bank's bottom line. What can be done, what can you do potentially to try and get us back to a sort of a normalcy where we can actually get money into the pockets of young generation who's been priced out of the market and maybe has a good job but can't get the capital to buy that house at phenomenal prices?
I've heard that very issue from multiple brokers that I've had conversations with. They have folks with the credit rating who would otherwise be able to qualify for a mortgage and they just can't get a loan because banks aren't lending. That to me is a direct result of the Dodd-Frank legislation, which basically put such onerous restrictions on banks and their cap sheets, their capitalization sheets, that to where they're to the point where they are afraid to lend money for the sake of having a bad performing asset on their sheet. The FDIC is going to come in and going to say, look, you're undercapped and you're going to be penalized. It's exactly what you went from here to here, instead of stopping somewhere around here. And that's where we need to bring that pendulum back to have reasonable regulation that's going to prevent against all that crazy lending and over-speculation and subprime mortgages and procedures that got people into loans that they didn't understand or could never have afforded when they reset. We need those regulations. But we can't get to that point where we impact the ability to lend. And where it's really hurt is not the big banks, but the small community banks. They're the ones that are hurting the most in trying to, and they say, look, we've got money to lend. The problem is we can't put it out there because we don't have as big a margin as the big banks. And so we have looked, the Financial Services Committee has looked at the impact of Dodd-Frank on consumer lending, and hopefully we will come up with a phased approach to get us back to the middle for reasonable regulation so we don't have the bad aspects on either end.
948. 948. 935.
I'll make it easy. I just have two quick yes/no questions. Do you support the DREAM Act? And do you or do you not support efforts to end birthright citizenship?
The question is, do I support the DREAM Act, and do I support or not support an effort to end birthright citizenship?
Correct.
DREAM Act, I have concerns with the DREAM Act. I think there's provisions in the DREAM Act that say if you go to school for 2 years, you become a citizen. There's no requirement to get a degree, a certification, to finish school. There's a requirement to 2 years of military service, and you become a citizen. No requirement for a full enlistment, which is 4 years. No requirement for an honorable discharge. So those are, and right now, you may have read, we're going to cut 80,000 soldiers and 20,000 Marines from the active duty force. What kind of pathway is that going to be as we start to shrink the size of our military? So I have concerns with how the DREAM Act is written. Birthright citizenship, there is, I believe there's a bill by Steve King out of Iowa that would end birthright citizenship. And I think that, my personal opinion is that if you're going to be a citizen, if you're going to be considered a citizen, you should be born to at least one parent that's a U.S. citizen. I do believe that we are the only industrialized nation that still grants birthright citizenship. And I think that, while I have not signed on as a co-sponsor of that bill, I think that it's something that warrants discussion. I think that the bill should hold a hearing. I think there should be open and frank dialogue about it, and then we make a decision.
930.
Recently, you supported the position that religious institutions do not have to mandatorily provide birth control or contraception to their employees. And you were quoted as saying that this was not a women's health issue.
It's not.
And as a physician, there's so much studies that show that contraception, especially birth control pills, prevent pelvic inflammatory disease, cervical cancer, or help aid in cervical cancer prevention, and other things. How can you deny any woman this right to have this employed by their employer?
For me, it's an issue of how intrusive do you want the federal government to be, and what's the role of the federal government? It's a rights of conscience issue under the First Amendment for the separation of church and state and religious protection, and the right to practice your religion unencumbered from governmental interference. Now, I'm not saying that, look, as a physician, I know that there's medical reasons and medical benefits for being on birth control. I know that as a physician, so, well, it's not. The issue is that there are plenty of places where women can obtain birth control. So this is an issue of what's the role of the federal government, how intrusive is the government going to be not only in the practice of religion, but also in your healthcare decisions. And that's the position that I take. Is that I understand that there's health benefits, but I'm more concerned with the idea of the government now coming in and stepping on our First Amendment rights to freedom of religion.
Number 926.
Currently, U.S. law states that companies and employers only hire people that are here of legal status. Right now, there's a good way for companies and employers to check. It's called E-Verify. It's currently a volunteer system, except in some cases, states have passed mandatory E-Verify laws. There's now a law that's been working through the House of Representatives that's called the Legal Workforce Act, H.R. 8885, and Dr. Joe Hack has co-sponsored that bill. I've got a friend that's got a roofing company, and he admitted to me that he knows that he hired some undocumented workers with fraudulent forged documents. And his rationale is the other companies are doing it. His competition does it. So if he has to make sure all his employees are of legal status, his rates can go up to what he hasn't been on projects, thus costing him jobs. That's how he justifies it. I don't think he feels good about it. He would rather the playing field was level. The bill that's going through Congress now makes it mandatory for everybody to use the verify, so it's not voluntary anymore. I'd like to thank you for doing that, and can you update us on the progress of that bill and share with us your thoughts a little bit on that situation?
You know, the issue of making sure that the people that are in the United States are here legally able to hold a job cuts across multiple facets. One of the other ones is to make sure that workers don't get exploited. When you have underground workers that are being hired, you know, off the books, whether they're documented or not, those are the workers that get exploited. And they don't have the protections of workers' comp. They don't get the Social Security and all those other issues. The bill has not yet had a hearing in the Judiciary Committee. I don't know if it's, last I heard it, it's not yet been scheduled, so it's up to the committee to schedule it for a hearing in March.
913.
Yeah, my question is regarding the thousands of guns that went across the border to Mexico under the direction of the PFE. There has been no one take any responsibility for any of that yet. We've had one agent, American agent, killed. God only knows how many private Mexican citizens died because of those. There's a bill, I believe, in the House right now, 409, a no confidence bill. I would like to know how you're going to no confidence in holders.
There was a letter, there was a no confidence letter.
Okay.
That I was a co-signer on. So I did sign on that letter. And there were two signatories on that letter saying, look, somebody, I was brought up earlier, either you knew and you were stupid or you didn't know you were incompetent. But either way, it's not looking good. And so somebody's got to stand up and take responsibility for closure for that family.
Thank you.
936.
Well, you asked a question. I was going to ask if you support the president's compromise where, you know, religious institutions do not have to directly pay for their employees, web employees. Support that?
It's not a compromise. It's not a compromise. Many other institutions have what's called ERISA healthcare plans. They're self-insured. So whether you can't push it off to an insurance company, because they are the insurance company as well. They're not only the employer, but they're the insurer.
Well, for me, it's not about religious choice at all. Now, you and I don't agree. We don't agree on anything that we spoke of. So I don't expect them to feel the way that I do. I see this as, have you ever heard them say the last time the GOP cared about you was when you were seized? You heard I'm just saying, have you heard it?
No. You've been to many of my events.
Right.
You're right, we've never agreed on an issue.
Correct.
It's not doesn't surprise me we don't agree on this one. And that's the beauty of this nation.
Exactly.
Is that disagree without being disagreeable.
So what you're saying is that you do not agree with it. You don't think it's a compromise and you don't agree.
That's why it's not a compromise. It's not, because those entities are self-insured, so you can't push it off. They're already insured.
No, you don't agree.
Right, that's what I said.
951. 951. 952.
Now, the issue that I'm concerned about has been in the news every day. It's what, I'd like to know what, in your opinion, should the United States and Israel do to stop Iran's nuclear ambitions, and what role, if any, Congress can play in that?
Well, I think that we certainly have to prevent Iran from even getting the capability to have a nuclear weapon. It's not from preventing them from getting a nuclear weapon, because by then it's too late. We've got to prevent them from getting the capability. And the way to do that, the administration is trying to sanctions, ratcheting up over the last couple of years, which really haven't had an effect. It was the House of Representatives that put into the Defense Authorization Act the sanctions on the Central Bank of Iran, which are the hardest hitting sanctions to date. They will go into effect in June, but already they have the value of the Iran currency has plummeted. It's already having an effect. You've seen other countries already start to limit their purchasing of Iranian oil. And I believe, like the President said, everything needs to be on the table. We hope that sanctions will work. We hope that diplomacy will work. But failing that, we have to make sure that we do not allow Iran to get the capability to develop a nuclear weapon. And we've got to stand with Israel in making sure that they are able to protect themselves.
917. 917. 958.
And I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you for your service, especially the president. My question has to do with the bank settlement in several weeks ago. Is there any estimate yet as to how many homeowners this might benefit?
I don't know what the estimate is for Nevada itself, but I know that the number that's been kicking around is about $1,500 to maybe $3,000 per homeowner, which certainly is not going to help many people in trying to get out from an underwater loan, or I think it's enough to help them try to refinance, pay for closing costs on refinance. And that's why we continue to work one-on-one with folks in our office to help them, whether it's get a mod, get a refi, get out from underneath a short sale. I don't think that this settlement is really going to benefit many people, to be honest.
955.
Dumb deal. They never should have signed on that.
955. 943.
Back to healthcare. So in Greece right now, there's a massive epidemic that they can't get a hold of, and I'm not sure if everyone's read about it. In England right now, they're closing 200 hospitals, including the hospital where penicillin was invented. And it's all because government bureaucrats are trying to run healthcare. And in today's newspaper in the RJ, the report shows that now in England, they're going to go to privatizing medicine because it's been a complete and utter disaster. Russia is far worse. 78% of their AIDS patients got it from blood transfusions and reused needles in their hospital. As a Russian scientist points out, good news, at least it was free for them. So with Kathleen Sebelius now dictating to either the churches or the insurance companies what they must do in the future under Obamacare, she would be the head of what's known as the IPAB, Independent Payment Advisory Board, 15 bureaucrats, 12 of which will be hand-chosen by the president, that have supreme central authority to regulate every single treatment that any one of you can get. They would tell you you may be too old to get a transplant or a blood transfusion, or you may see a sign like in Glasgow, Scotland that says no one allowed into this ER if you're over the age of 65. And that's what we're looking at. And so these are the mandates. And if we'll all remember, Bart Stupak and Ben Nelson were the last holdouts for the Obamacare passage in 2009, and Pelosi was quoted in the Associated Press as saying, risk your careers, risk the re-election in 2010. Just pass this. Christmas Eve, midnight, 1 in the morning, that's how it was passed. So my question is given all these facts, and they are facts, how would you propose to change the way in which healthcare is being dictated by the government to make it so that the patients, all the people here and all around the country, that the patients are the #1 priority, not the bureaucrats?
Our healthcare system isn't perfect, but it is certainly the best in the world. And I think that when you go around, and I've done a lot of traveling, and you see how healthcare is provided in other nations, whether it's a private-run healthcare system or a socialized state-run healthcare system, there's no healthcare system in the world that outshines what's done here in the United States. The goal is to make sure that everybody has equal access to that healthcare system so that they can all benefit from those great advances that we've had here in the United States. The IPAB, what we call the Medicare IRS, is the thing that's going to prevent everybody from getting that equal access by determining what will be reimbursed, how much will be reimbursed, what services are offered. That's why there's a bill out there to repeal the IPAB, to repeal the healthcare reform bill in total, and to come back with a replacement vehicle that would actually give patients and doctors more control over the healthcare that they receive and that they provide. And that's the process that we're going through, trying to take away those onerous provisions of the healthcare reform law and replace it with patient-centered healthcare reforms that allow the patient and the doctor to make a decision of what's best in their best interest for that patient. And we can go on for hours on that topic alone. We've had several small pieces of legislation that have started that, and we will continue to work on it to make sure that we get patients and doctors back in charge and not the 15 unelected bureaucrats sitting in Washington, D.C.
944.
Thought I'd get a little nervous, so I thought I'd write it down.
Want the mic?
Oh, yeah, sure.
The whole 9 yards.
So my concern is the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. Virginia thought the language was very ambiguous, enough to draft HB 1160. Last week, the Virginia House of Delegates voted 96-4 to pass this bill. Prevents any employee or member of the military of Virginia from assisting an agency of the U.S. Armed Forces in investigating, prosecuting, or detaining a citizen of the U.S. in violation of the U.S. Constitution or Constitution of Virginia. Do you think HB 1160 is appropriate or necessary?
Well, we actually have a piece of legislation at the federal level to clarify the NDAA so that every state doesn't have to try to do it. I appreciate you bringing up the NDAA. This is an issue that has brought up a lot of controversy when it was passed. And thinking that that issue may come up, I brought some of the applicable pages. Now, first, I'll tell you that I sit on the Armed Services Committee, and I'm fortunate to sit on the Intel Committee, the two committees that have jurisdiction over this bill. When the version came out of the Senate, we felt in the House that the language was ambiguous. I also sat on the Conference Committee. That's the committee that brings the House members and the Senate members together to fix the differences between the two bills. And we said to the Senate, we think it's ambiguous, we need to fix it. And there was new language inserted into the final version, the conference report, that clearly states that the provisions of authorization of use of military force and the detention of military detention does not apply to U.S. citizens. And I've got those pieces here. Now, because there was such an outcry, and people felt that it might still be ambiguous, there's another piece of legislation that's pending right now that will make it doubly certain clear that it does not apply to U.S. citizens or permanent legal residents. And if you care, I've got them here. You can see I've even highlighted the pages that talks about who's covered under this bill. And the piece that says authorities. Nothing in this section shall be construed to affect existing laws or authorities relating to the detention of the United States citizens, lawful resident aliens of the U.S., or any other persons who are captured or arrested in the United States. So this even says that it doesn't apply not just to citizens, but people here in the United States. But we are working to clarify it so we take all questions off the table.
Do you have backers for this bill? Are you heading this bill?
There's many co-signers to that bill, and we're hoping that it gets a hearing soon so we can put this issue to rest. I'll tell you, look, I've served for 21 years in uniform. When I first took my oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, it was knowing that the potential risk was my life. I didn't take it for the first time as a politician, where the potential risk was my next election. And I've spent 21 years, serving, protecting those very liberties and freedoms that our Constitution provides. And I would never, ever vote for a piece of legislation that I thought would harm, hinder, or in any way encumber those freedoms and liberties.
Now that you've had your chance to get your feet wet in muddy water in Washington, how do you feel about term limits and why?
You know, I get the question a lot. I always say, look, I personally believe that term limits occur every election cycle. I do. That's my personal opinion. And people say, well, you know, once you're an incumbent and you're entrenched, it's next to impossible to get unelected. And I remind people that when I first ran for office, my first run was in State Senate District 5. And I beat, in the primary, a 20-year incumbent of my own party. So if you're the right candidate at the right time with the right message, you can unseat incumbents. And that's the way our founding fathers envisioned it. That's what our Constitution talks about. That's my personal belief. Now, that being said, the people of the state of Nevada have said we want term limits. They voted for it twice. They put it in our Constitution that no more than 12 years in a seat. I will abide by the wishes of the people of Nevada. Should I be fortunate to be reelected, I will not serve for more than 12 years in this seat, because that's what the term limits are that the people of Nevada have said they want.
Nine two two. 953.
What is your opinion on the drug war and what can be done to reduce the drug abuse?
Good question. The question was, you know, the drug war and what can we do to decrease the drug epidemic. I think that, what do I think about the drug war and what do I think we can do to decrease the drug epidemic? You know, it's unfortunate that Nevada is at the top of the list right now for abuse of prescription drugs. And I think that the drug war that we've been waging on illicit drugs has been missing the mark. Not that it's not important to stop narco-terrorists and folks that are trying to bring the hard stuff up from South America through Mexico. But we're missing the boat because we're not concentrating on what the big issue is right now in the United States, and that's the abuse of prescription drug medication. Now, Nevada has actually taken decent steps. And I give the legislature a lot of credit. Linda, you were clapping. Do you agree on something?
We agree on that.
So, and I give the legislature credit. They passed a law that says, and they put in place a system that allows physicians in real time to go check the PEA reports to see if some, I mean, I'm a New York guy. We always see folks doctor shopping, looking for their next prescription. And now we have the way to go in and punch it in and see just exactly how many emergency departments they've been to and how many pharmacies they've been to, and be able to say, look, I'm not going to refill your prescription, and I'm going to get you help. And I think that's where we need to concentrate. I don't think we should be concentrating as much on fighting this drug war in faraway lands. We need to be curing the epidemic for prescription medications right here at home.
939.
We got okay.
So, I also agree that the mortgage fraud is not the best thing. And I'm very sorry about it. I'm a little underwater. I'm not. My neighborhood was devastated. Devastated. People had just moved into those homes because there had been a boom. They got easy credit. And all those people got wiped out in the very first few months of the crisis. And it brings tears to my eyes. Because I wonder, where did those people go? Where are they now? What are their lives? It just breaks my heart. And for me, you know, I really applaud Catherine Cortez Castro, our Attorney General, for really striving to come up with the best deal. And I know she held out as long as she could. But I don't think that $2,000 is enough for anybody. I don't think that's enough. But what I want to know is, I understand that that civil liability is ended, but there are still criminal prosecutions if they find we are wrong. Do you agree with that? I think the people want to go to jail because they stole people's lives. A murderer goes to jail. These people murder people. They took everything.
We can go 3 for 3 here. Look, I agree that if there is somebody who committed fraud, all the robo-signing, fraudulent documents, all those things that set people up for failure. If you find out, and therein is the big if, but you gotta find, no matter who it is, no matter who it is, I think it's abhorrent that individuals were taken advantage of. You know, you hear it all the time. You know, well, they should have known what they were getting. Look, you know, but there's a group of folks that are walking away from their homes only because they treat their home as an investment. Their house is an investment, not a home. And they're upside down, they look at it like a stock, I'll cut my losses and I'm leaving. I think those people need to be held accountable too.
Thank you.
Because those are folks that can afford to make their payment, they're leaving because they're treating it as an investment, and they're adding to this big inventory that then is driving down everybody else's property values. But the idea that banks were fraudulently processing documents, you've got to hold everybody accountable, and it's got to start. It's got to start. Well, how many more people have tickets? Okay, let's go run the tickets. 5 more. We were supposed to end at 7, but I want to give everybody a chance to ask the question, so we'll run the tickets.
957. 957.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I wanted to know how you feel about these so-called personhood initiatives that are popping up all over the country. Do you support that type of legislation?
I'm not a big supporter of the initiative process. I think, you know, you elect your representatives to go and do their job, whether it's in Carson City or if it's in Washington, D.C. And I think the initiative process is something that really doesn't, sometimes it's easy to get signatures, sometimes it's not. I don't have an opinion on the personhood amendment in particular. My part is on initiatives, and I don't necessarily think initiatives are the best way to go.
950.
Hi, I'm going to try and speak up without the mic.
Sure.
Sure. I was wondering, just to clarify the exception for Catholic entities to be exempted out of the birth control requirements, I was wondering if you would also be supportive of, for example, fundamentalist Islamic organizations or businesses that don't want their employees to be treated by female physicians. So would that also be something that you would respect as religious liberty?
Well, it's not a matter of being a fundamentalist Islam. That's a tenet of Islam. And we have made accommodations in the hospitals where I have worked. That if a Muslim patient comes in and she does not want to be seen by a male physician, we make that accommodation and we find a female physician to take care of that patient.
Sorry, that wasn't exactly my question. So, no, if a fundamentalist Islamic organization doesn't want their employees participating in a healthcare plan that has female physicians treating them, would you allow them to opt out under this religious liberty exception?
I don't think you can make that comparison because there's female and male physicians on every insurance plan. So there's always the opportunity to be seen by a same gender physician.
So, I mean, in instances, there are plenty of places where there are no primary care physicians that are females. So if you had that instance where a fundamentalist Muslim institution wanted to opt out of the healthcare plan because they don't want their employees to be treated by a female physician, would you respect that under your religious liberty exception?
I have to look at that in more detail. You know, just on face value, I'm saying that there's always an opportunity to be seen by a gender-specific healthcare provider to meet any religious needs.
Please keep it one question per person as well. 923.
Thank you, Congressman, for having the Townhall. I know we all don't agree on a lot of different issues, but these meetings are important. We can all get on the same page and talk about the issues that are important. So my issue, I served in the United States Marine Corps. I am not anti-war. If we are attacked, we should beat whoever that is down. We should achieve victory. However, the vast majority of the people that serve these wars are the poor and the middle class, right? And 4,500 guys died in Iraq. 32,000 guys got wounded. The cost of Afghanistan is probably just as grievous. Not only the monetary cost. So, in a time of war, we used to come together as a nation. Everybody used to sacrifice. There was a draft. Everybody had to participate. So I hear this talk about Iran, right? And I don't discount the fact that they may or may not be a threat. However, if we're marching down that same path to war like we did in Iraq, I guess my question is to you, why is it such a hot potato to ask people who make a crap load amount of money to pay a little bit more in taxes to pay for wars that are end up going on credit cards that our children have to pay for? And we have to serve in the military to protect our country. So my question is to you, would you support raising taxes on people who make over $1 million who otherwise don't serve in the military to protect our freedom?
Well, I think the answer goes back to the earlier question that we had on taxes. Everybody's got to pay their fair share. Everybody benefits, and that means everybody. And that means some people are going to have to pay $1 just to make sure they're paying something. Because everybody benefits from the service that you provided when you were in uniform. And everybody should have skin in the game. And everybody needs to pay something. And you know, we probably have a great discussion on Iraq, Afghanistan, and what happened. And I agree, we went to Afghanistan for a valid purpose. We took our eye off the ball. We went into Iraq, whether it was right or wrong, but we took our eye off the ball. And then we started at square one again when we went back to Afghanistan and just delayed and lost our initial gains. And we could probably have a great talk on strategy of where we went wrong at. And I pray to God that we don't go to war in Iran. And I don't think we will. I don't think we will put boots on the ground in Iran. But I think that the issue is everybody's got to have skin in the game, and when we go to war, and we commit our sons and daughters, and brothers and sisters to harm's way, that we damn well better come together as a nation and make sure that they have the resources that they need, they have our unyielding support, and so do their families who are waiting here at home for them to return.
See, the best for last. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your service. You've done a great job. So far. You're very visible and really appreciate your trouble. I do have a question on the internet, and specifically on security, the copyright issues, and several bills. My concern is the freedom of speech on the internet and to keep it as open as possible.
Sure. The questions are on SOPA and HIPAA, were the two bills that were floating through the House on the ability for government to shut down the internet for copyright, intellectual property violations. I came out vocally against both those bills. I say that the government should not have the right to turn off the internet without due process. Okay? I also think that we need to have the protection so that intellectual property isn't being stolen. But I have great concerns when the government can just decide that something's going wrong and flip a switch. Because where did we see that? Where did we see that? We saw that in the Middle East during the Arab Spring when the folks that were trying to bring their country back were using the internet to communicate, and the government turned off their ability to communicate. So the good news is, I think those bills have been kind of buried right now, and they are waiting to come up with something that will allow that to go forward, but with due process. That's how we operate here in the United States. All right,
933. 933.
Are you 933? There you go.
On the religious thing, there's Matthew 25. We have to take care of people who are sick, very sick. Dr. Hamlin, he got into my brain.
Yeah, good
34 years ago, you know. After that, I got my master's degree in mathematics, and then the private sector wouldn't hire a handicap. So I got a job from the Air Force, computer programming for 22 years, okay? But, so I don't, there's no problem with me, you know? I've got my retirement and I'm okay. But I've known people who have died because they didn't have, the private sector wouldn't give them health care, you know? I still have people who are my friends that are handicapped now who are having very big trouble. I think, I know it's a wild idea, but what about single payer?
There we go. Well, and I think it goes back to the earlier point when I said the goal of any healthcare reform is to make sure that every American has equal access to the same quality health care as every other American. You should not be able to get health care because you have a disability, you have a pre-existing condition, you can't afford it. Everybody should have access to quality health care. The issue of single payer was brought up during the healthcare reform legislation. I personally do not believe that a single payer system is the way to go. We see places that have single payer systems that are now trying to move away from it because the cost of the government is just unsustainable. It was mentioned just today in the RJ, the article about Britain, which has what was thought to be the gold standard of a socialized healthcare system, seriously looking at trying to inject some private sector competition. I think the best system is a combination of the two. I don't think a totally single-payer system the government can run or a totally private system with no safety net is the right way to go. You've got to have the balance so that everybody gets the promises.
Number 949.
Last one.
Yes, sir.
Save the best for last. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much. Seems like a lot of people are interested in real estate right now. And I happen to read that there is a tax of 3.8% on the sale of a home starting in 2014 to help pay for health care. And as I understand the president, he has promised that no one making income under $250,000 would be taxed.
It's a little bit of a confusing tax. It's not specifically a real estate tax. It's an increased capital gains tax. So regardless of where that revenue would come from, for most people it would be the sale of a home. And it would be for that amount over $250,000 in profit would then be taxed at the 3.8% addition. So if you had a home, you sold a home, and you realized a gain of $300,000, you would be taxed on that capital gain with only $250,000 tax. With a $50,000 difference, right, on the difference. So it's a straight capital gains tax. It's not just real estate, but a lot of people use real estate as the example because that's where some people would probably see that type of capital gains. And yes, that money does go to fund the healthcare reform legislation. Okay, one thing. Oh, and the gentleman in the back wanted to go ahead. Sir, you wanted to ask a question? Yeah, well, we'll let this lady go and then let you know.
Hold it closer.
As they vote, the legislation that was passed, payroll tax holiday, HR 2630.
We can't hear you.
I don't see how extending a payroll tax holiday is going to help Social Security remain solid. Why not just cut in the tax rate? And also, I see that it's going to be paid for by mortgage fees. And I want to ask you more about that.
The payroll tax holiday that was extended for the next 10 months, there is a sweep. It's going to cost about $100 billion. There is a sweep over to that. That Social Security stays home. There's no money being taken out of Social Security. The Social Security remains home. That money is being moved into the Social Security fund to make up for the payroll tax holiday. Yeah. And trust me, it's being moved into the Social Security Trust Fund to make up the difference. I voted, read the bill, voted on it. In addition, the second piece was,
Well, the money, the money is coming from mortgage fees.
no, there are no mortgage fees in the bill that just passed last week. There are no, there were mortgage fees in the 2-month measure that passed in December for the 2-month period. There's no mortgage fees in the bill that just passed last week and carried through the end of the year. And so the money for the payroll tax holiday is being swept from the general fund into the Social Security Trust Fund to cover that $100 billion hole, so that the fund stays solid. Now, there was talk about, this is going to create, this is going to create jobs. It's not going to be a huge economic stimulus, but here's the thing. It is a tax decrease. It's a tax decrease. And people, there are folks, myself included, believe that if you're going to decrease taxes, you don't need to pay for it. That's like saying, you're not collecting money that was projected to be collected. You can't have a pay for it. And where's that going to be more important? At the end of this year, the 0103 tax cuts are going to expire. Those are big tax cuts. Now, if there's a debate about extending them, and all of a sudden somebody says, well, where does the pay for it going to come from? It'll never happen. So the idea of trying to pay for a tax decrease and allowing people to keep more of their own money, to me, doesn't make sense. I'd rather you keep your money and have the tax decrease and then say, we're going to move on. Well, you want to clarify?
If people are, I hope that people are putting that money aside, that extra money that they're seeing in their.
This payroll tax holiday for the next 10 months takes no money out of Social Security. No money whatsoever. Social Security is kept home. And sir, we called your number earlier, but we didn't want to run into delay. So you want to ask your question?
My question is about immigration. And just tell me exactly the way first. My wife, I am a citizen, my kids are born and raised here, and my wife just got deported about 4 years ago because of immigration laws, and we cannot overrule that thing. And the government can't do anything for us because my family already blew out, and my younger daughter, about 17 years old, run away from the house. And I have a lot of healing problems, like high blood pressure, blood sugar, arthritis, everything, hearing, vision, and I cannot take care of myself anymore. How I can get my wife back here?
Well, sir, what I'd ask you to do is, as you leave, make sure you leave your contact information at the table here so we have one of our caseworkers give you a call. We don't want you to go into a lot of detail in public. We'll get the information that we need and see what we can do to try to help you. All right, with that, folks, okay, I appreciate all you taking the time to come here this evening.